Hi, thank you for joining. We're here to quickly talk about and invite you all to register for an upcoming webinar, Unleashing the Synergies between MDR and BCDR on May 9th at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Oftentimes, these two technologies are considered bookends of a solid data protection solution, but we often overlook the synergies that can help enhance defense and strengthen business information. I'm Jim Peterson, Principal Solution Advisor at ConnectWise, where I help MSPs in our ConnectWise Partner Program with their thought leadership and execution of events. But I'm also an ex-MSP owner, so I know personally the struggles that small businesses can have when they don't have quite the data protection solution that they need. I'm thankful to be joined in this conversation by Matt Topper and Stephen Nichols, and I'll turn this over to Matt for a quick introduction.
Hey guys, I'm Matt Topper, a security evangelist with ConnectWise, and in that role, I'm something of a translator, trying to help translate security practices into actionable security programs, not just tools and awesome technology, as fantastic as they are, but helping to build a real program of security management using some of that awesome technology, right? Business continuity is more than just taking the backups, it's the policies and procedures around that. And that's one of my roles here, is to help our partners and help anyone in the MSP community take some of those amazing technologies and wrap them into a holistic security program. So great to be here, and I'll turn it over to Stephen.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Matt. Super excited to be here, and really excited for the webinar that we're going to be able to get a little more in depth, talk about some of those ideas and stretch things out. But so my role, I run the solution engineering team in North America for Acronis, and we provide some of those technologies that Matt was talking about, that you put together with the policies and you put together with the thought leadership in order to be able to make sure that your data is protected, not just against hardware failure, things like that, but more importantly, against the biggest threat to data today, and that is ransomware. And it's bringing all of that together in a way that makes sense for MSPs with tools and processes that work for them to help them to build their business.
Oh, that's awesome. And for those of you that are ready to sign up, you can find a link for the webinar registration in the comments below. And you can also ask questions while we're here. We're going to go through this live session real quick and be ready for the webinar, but feel free to drop questions in now. Now, one of the things, guys, and I'd love a quick discussion on this, data protection doesn't start with BCDR or MDR. It typically starts with really understanding our client's environment. And I stuff data into kind of three buckets: data we control, which is typically backed up, part of that BCDR process; data we don't control, which is a lot of times in SaaS applications or hosted environments; and then data we don't know about. And I think that third one we often ignore and pretend like it's not there, and BYOD devices or unsanctioned applications. So it'll be interesting to see how we can talk about a holistic solution and where BCDR falls into that. Stephen, I'm sure you probably jump into this kind of thing a lot of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would agree, though. The first step is understanding the problem, right? It's understanding what is the scope of that information. And a lot of that discovery, as you said, means you have to not just understand the things you already know, you need to start to be able to understand the things you don't know. And so you need, as an MSP, to really have a unique process when you go into each customer, but it needs to be repeatable, right? So there's going to be similar things that you need to look at, and really building that into a practice. I would also say, from the point of view of data discovery, there are some tools out there. I mean, Acronis has some, other vendors have some to help you to discover that data, but that would be one of the very first things that I would want to do if I was an MSP going in with a new client, is really get deep into understanding not just what data they have, but what data and processes are mission critical. That's where you start getting into those things that are now we really need to think about business continuity for those. If they're down, even for a short period of time, it can impact the business.
Well, that is such a true statement. And Matt, from the MDR side, for a long time, EDR AV was kind of the standard, right? Hopefully moving from one to the other to EDR, but MDR is really becoming kind of the central point or the central decision to make for those endpoint devices. How do you determine whether someone is in need of that from their either cyber insurance policy or just general practices?
Well, I think the answer is you're in need of it And it's really just a matter of convincing anyone whether you are or aren't at this point. I think the ship has sailed at this point on, do you need MDR? Whether you're talking about, from the endpoint protection MDR definition or from the managed disaster recovery definition, you kind of need both of them at this point, right? And
Yeah.
even if you're not the one doing it, right, you're trying to do it in-house or versus outsourcing, the need for that is still there. And one of the conversations that we used to have with clients when I was doing MSP work was, you don't really, the client kind of just assumed that we're taking care of everything as the MSP, especially when it comes to their disaster recovery. And they really want to, yes, we can help restore the data for you, but that doesn't necessarily keep your business in business, right? There's no continuity plan. There's no alternate site set up. There's no thought of what your work recovery time are, or any of that kind of thing. And so one of the big things that we can do is start having those conversations with clients about, what does being down really mean to you, right? Everyone says, yeah, I can tolerate being down for 2 days, until they're actually down for 2 days.
Yeah, we have this conversation a lot in our BCDR community about maximum tolerable downtime. And it could be different per application, but we have this holistic conversation around it as well. And then also data retention. We think about how long should we retain data for the business without starting to creep into the bad area of discoverability of long-term data. And then those policies, BCP, business continuity plan, disaster recovery plan, and incident response plan. How do you guys see people testing these in the real world today?
I would say that it's one of the biggest opportunities for both end customers and MSPs is to be more robust in their testing, because just like when you have a building and you don't want the first time that you're evacuating that building to be in a real fire. We have fire drills. We go through them, and you do those in to the point where it becomes routine. And I think the same thing is important when you're talking about an incident response or disaster recovery plan. They need to be rehearsed, they need to be validated. You're always going to find efficiencies. You're always going to find areas where you can improve them. And much better to do that when everyone's relaxed and there isn't a real incident that's going on. You've got a clear head. But in addition to that, I think you're going to discover things that you missed, right? You may be like, oh, there's this other system dependency that we didn't consider as a mission critical, but one of our mission critical applications requires, that database server or whatever to be available as well. So going through that plan, lots of MSPs do that today, but I think they're doing it more as a check the box, as opposed to it being something that's really going to simulate a real incident so that they understand, what those problems are going to be.
Right on.
And you hit the nail on the head. How many times have you seen, yes, the server booted, service didn't start, or it turns out it has some dependency on Active Directory and the domain controller is not up, or most commonly, the server's up and no one has any ability to access it.
Yeah, and when we're talking about the synergies between MDR and BCDR, one conversation that we typically have is you never want to turn restoration of your environment over to the bad actors. You never want to rely on them recovering your environment. And through great MDR hygiene and great BCDR hygiene, you really get the best of both worlds to protect on the front and the back end. So it's always a challenge.
Yep. One of the other things that we're finding that some people may not be aware of is when you have an incident, especially a ransomware incident, where you've got servers that are impacted. If you have law enforcement or insurance involved in that incident, they will often segregate those servers until there's an investigation. So if you don't have a BDR opportunity, if you don't have a way to be able to get those critical workloads back up during that investigation, you're at risk of even a more extended outage, even beyond just the actual direct impact of the ransomware or the threat actors.
Absolutely. Well, Matt, any final comments you want to throw out here as we start to wrap this up?
No, I'm looking forward to this discussion. We've already brought up some of the big hard-hitting topics, and going deeper into them is going to be fun.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining. We hope to see you on May 9th at 10 a.m. for our webinar, Unleashing the Synergies Between MDR and BCDR. Just a reminder, you can find the link for registration in the comments below. You can also go to connectwise.com and search Unleash Synergies. webinar, and you'll see that link on the page. On behalf of Matt, Stephen, and our collective teams at ConnectWise and Acronis, thank you very much for your attention. We look forward to seeing you, and stay protected.
Thanks.